surveys are really helpful. So absolutely. So can I change the slides, or will you do it, Ali?
And
I'm not sure.
Ali, I forgot to hit record at the beginning. So Helen, do you mind if I hit record now?
No, I think somebody did, didn't they?
I think I just did. My bad.
Yeah.
Helen, I can advance for you, or if you want to share your own screen, you can.
Let's just use this one, because otherwise we're just wasting time. So I should probably just introduce myself a little bit before I introduce the university. So I have been in the sector for 24 years, and when I say sector, I mean a kind of public engagement sector. We call it public engagement these days. Generally, it's the dominant term, but it covers all the things that we've been talking about. There's outreach, there's informal science learning, communication of science, all those different things. So yes, it's a kind of mixed bag in the UK. In that time, I've been a practitioner, so I've been on the ground making interactive exhibits and doing science demonstration shows and all the things I've heard you talking about as well. I did a PhD looking at public engagement with climate change, which was a fully social science PhD. I trained as I had a biology and physics undergraduate, a dual honours. And then for the last 10 years, I've been in the role that I'm in now, or this type of role anyway, which is more of a sort of mobiliser role. So I'm there to make the case for public engagement within the university that I'm in and previously. So I'm there to build capacity and capability for public engagement across the institution. So that's with both my academic colleagues, but also within the professional services, which is the non-academic sort of staff body as well. So yeah, so a little bit of background just very briefly then. So we'll look at the next slide. So just to give you a bit of background on the University of Bath so that you can make some sense out of what I'm saying in relation to yourself. We're quite a young university. We're sort of mid-50s, soon approaching our 60th birthday. We claim that we are research and teaching intensive, dual intensive. We're based in the southwest of England. We're quite small. We're a kind of mid-sized university, got a research portfolio of 165 million. These are all the kind of stats that we reel off so that we make some sense out of each other's work. We have a thing called the REF in the UK, which is our assessment exercise. And the last time we did that, we were told that 92% of our research was defined as world leading. And in terms of student population, we've got about 14,000 undergrads and about 6,000 postgrads. We are a postgraduate campus university, sorry. So we are on the top of a hill outside of the city. And just to add a little bit of complication in terms of our relationship with the town and with the city and the region, we are based in a World Heritage City. So that just adds a little layer of complication. So that's a bit about the University of Bath, hopefully just to sort of set the scene. So the next slide is about the public engagement unit. So that's the team that I head up. And we were established in 2012, so just over 10 years ago. And we were supported by funding from what is now called UKRI, UK Research and Innovation. That's the umbrella body that distributes public funding for research. And our brief was to create a positive culture of public engagement with research. And we were one of 8 universities that had this funding at the same time. And we all had the same brief, but we could do it however it was right for our institution. So back to that point that, public engagement is one of those things that needs to be kind of context dependent. We took an approach, we were funded for 3 years. So those first 3 years was definitely about sort of learning and listening and working. Like, I knew how to do public engagement as a practitioner, but I didn't know what it was like to be a researcher doing public engagement. I didn't know what it was like to be a researcher at the University of Bath doing public engagement. So we had to support and learn from and with our colleagues doing this. We're now, like I said, we're a kind of capacity and capability building unit. So because we're so small, we're 2.5 people, got 3,000 colleagues. We can't do public engagement on behalf of our colleagues. So we work with our colleagues to help them do their own public engagement. And we are now at a point where, like I say, we're sort of 10, 11 years down the line, and when we're now core funded, we're a core part of the infrastructure for the university. Okay. So thinking about why public engagement is important, so that all of that kind of early stage work that we definitely did it around kind of wanting to understand why our researchers at the University of Bath wanted to do public engagement with research. And we did that through a number of mechanisms. We gave people money, we did training, we ran awards, you know, we did a whole bunch of things which are still in place actually. And I could talk about that more, but that I don't think that's quite so. Anyway, I'm digressing. And through that process of learning with our academic colleagues and our professional services colleagues as well, we found that there were 4 main reasons why researchers found public engagement useful. So they said that it allowed them to like align their research with broader society. It helped them put it in a place and they could see how it could link up with society in general. And because of that, it was also therefore more likely to make a positive contribution to society because it was sort of tuned in a little bit, or they could at least articulate those links more clearly. By doing engagement work, our colleagues told us that it really develops skills really, really quickly. And these are core skills that are needed for being an academic as well as being a public engagement practitioner. And I think I heard somebody say that they were interested in getting a job in this area. And the sorts of things that people said were, you know, I've learned how to do project management, I've learned how to do risk assessments, I've learned how to work in an interdisciplinary team, you know, all these things that we have to do as academics, but, you know, they learned them really quickly by getting involved with public engagement. And then the last one they found is that it raised the profile of themselves. And this was particularly pertinent for those academic colleagues who, physicists, mathematicians, you know, the bench scientists who basically don't have lots of easy stories to tell about their work, but by doing some engagement work, they would by definition doing work with people. And we all know that people's stories are the things that tell, you know, is what people are interested in. We're humans, we like to interact with other humans. And so the press office would get interested in the public engagement work, and that gave them a little bit of profile and confidence and visibility. So yeah. Okay. So definitions of what we mean by the term. I've used the term public engagement with research repeatedly, and Ali introduced the term and said it's a bit of a catch-all term, and I would agree with it. We have this as a generic definition that we use in the UK, and you'll see it's very, very broad. So it says the myriad of ways in which the activity and benefits of higher education and research can be shared with the public. Engagement is a two-way process involving interaction and listening with the goal of generating mutual benefit. And you can fit almost anything under that. But through our work, what we found was that we had a slightly sort of a more nuanced definition. So I think that's on the next slide, Ali. So we use these sorts of definitions if we're going to unpick the terms. So for us, the public or multiple publics, plural, we would always argue that there's no such thing as a singular general public. There are multiple publics, and these are people outside of academic settings, and in settings where those people have agency and choice to engage. So that's our public in public engagement. Engagement, we wouldn't disagree with in terms of the previous definition, which came from the National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement. That's kind of national body. And definitely we always talk about engagement being a two-way process, and it generates mutual benefit. Worth noting that the two-way exchange doesn't have to be synchronous. So it might be that, you know, that you might do one thing one day and it's only a little bit down the line that you start being able to hear and listen and understand the benefits. So we're not expecting every single intervention to be, you know, face to face, looking in the whites of their eyes, talking to people kind of thing. And then the research obviously is the generation of new knowledge. It's what we're doing. It's our business. And so the reason we put a focus on that is because public engagement with science or physics more generally can be done by anybody. Or not anybody, but you know, like I came from that practitioner background. I was there going, well, I can do introductions to Newton's laws, right? That's really basic science. And people are happy with that in some context. But actually, the thing that makes this offer unique for our public groups and participants and audiences, visitors, is that it's live research, it's real research, and they're meeting a researcher. Because most people, it's certainly in the UK, don't know a professor or even a doctoral researcher. They probably don't know the difference, but anyway, that's the other thing. And then finally, the last thing that we sort of put as a kind of boundary around this term public engagement with research is that public engagement with research is something that enhances and enriches the research rather than being essential to it. So there are instances, particularly in the humanities and social sciences, where engagement is a means for recruitment or it's participatory work, and you can't do the research without those people, whereas we will always say actually public engagement is something that adds something to you and your research, and it enhances and enriches it. If it's core, it's not. Basically, it was a way of us saying, I need to put some boundaries, we have very limited resources, we're going to put that boundary around it. And then a couple of examples just to illustrate what we're talking about before I finish. So this was one that was a physicist who made, the name escapes me, glass tubes that light travels down. Oh, my brain's just completely stopped. She made those glasses, fiber optics, there we are, that's the one. Thank you. She ended up with her PhD and her postgraduate work very much in the kind of the craft, really interested in the craft of physics and the work that goes on there. So she applied to us for a little bit of funding to run a swap shop with other crafters and makers. And there was a bit of a swap shop on campus where people came and, brought their laser cutters and their 3D printers, and they made glass things. And she's now gone on to work with a sculptor who's going to make a glass-based sculpture as well. So that was one example. Our next one, I don't have a picture for it, unfortunately. So these are two researchers who were working with, they created a kind of sound sculpture, and that was based on their work, and they worked then with blind and visually impaired people who could, so that they could kind of interact with the space and interact with the sound that was going on. So that was one, looking at crystal structures. Unfortunately, yeah, no picture of that yet. And then another example is we called it Walking with Scientists. This is a walking tour around Bath. Now, I don't know if anyone's been to Bath or not, but I don't know what it's like where you are, but going on a walking tour with a guide is quite common. So this was a mechanism that worked quite well for the regular kind of context of the city of Bath. So this was a walking tour. It was created by a local theatre company, and Bath as a city has a lot of heritage around science, and it's quite hidden a lot of the time. But what we wanted to do was link that heritage science. So there's really, important historical moments in time or discoveries or places with what's going on at the University of Bath. Now, I said before, the University of Bath is a campus on the top of the hill. A lot of people you can't see it. A lot of people don't even know there's a university. So this was a way of us coming down off the hill and interacting with locals. It was primarily locals who came on this tour, actually. And we had actually researchers from all sorts of different disciplines. This one is an engineer who's actually using the historical high watermarks around the city to look at flooding. But we also had an astrophysicist who spoke about their work at the Herschel Museum. I'm sure some of you will know who William and Caroline Herschel are, but they were based in Bath. And I think that's it. Oh, and our last one, sorry, is Benzi, who he actually won a prize for this work, and he does a lot of stuff with schools workshops on light, and it's stuff I think you'd be very familiar with. There's a bit of a kind of presentation-y bit at the beginning, and then like a circus of activities. But what was really interesting for this one, the reason why he won the prize for it, which was the Vice Chancellor's prize for public engagement, was because he really used that opportunity to listen and learn. And he actually had one of the activities, and I can't remember the detail, and forgive me, but basically the young people were manipulating stuff. And by doing that, they actually created new models and then his team could go away and look at them. And so that kind of informed his research. And he also used it to bring his postgraduate students along as well. So they got to get involved and develop that skill set through that mechanism and that process. So he'd really understood about the value and the importance of it. This is something that's got to be valuable to him and his research team and his research group. It's not an altruistic endeavour. It's like there's got to be some kind of mutual benefit there. So yeah, and I think that's it, isn't it, Ali? Brilliant.